Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are going to be talking about would rather today, so hang in there while I get everything set up. There we go. Let's take a look here, and I'll start the presentation. So would rather is all about making choices, all right? And when you're asking to choose between one or the other, that's when you could use the phrase would rather. As soon as I swap, we'll be ready to go. All right. So taking a look at would rather. Would rather expresses what's called preference. Preference is something you prefer or like in comparison to something else. So take a look at the word preference. Do you see the word prefer in the beginning? P-R-E-F-E-R. F-E-R. Mhm. To prefer means to like something better than something else. If you were given the choice of two things, which one would you pick? Chocolate or vanilla? Okay. Someplace warm or someplace cold? Take a look at these two examples. So on the left is a boy swimming in summertime. On the right are some kids skipping down the road in wintertime. Which season do you prefer? Do you prefer the warmth of summer, being out in the heat? Or do you prefer the cold of winter and getting lots of snow? Which one do you like in comparison to the other? All right. Perhaps you said, I like the cold. I like the snow. There are lots of things I like to do in the snow. And so a formal way of saying your answer would be to structure it using the modal would rather, and it would look something like this. I would rather play in the snow than play on the beach. All right, you might be curious as to how we go ahead and construct an answer with the modal would rather. So here are some things you need to keep in mind. Whenever we construct our answers with would rather, you start with your subject, then you put in would rather, then you put in verb number one, the verb you pick, then verb number two, the choice you didn't pick. Here are two examples. Brock would rather play in the snow than play on the beach. Shane would rather play on the beach than play in the snow. Do you see the construction? Brock and Shane are both the subjects. Then you have would rather. Then you have verb, which I've underlined, verb number one, some information. Then you have the word than, which is part of the would rather construction, would rather than. And then you see the second verb underlined, more information. Given these two sentences, which boy likes the winter more than the summer? Right, it's Brock. It's the boy who said he would rather play in the snow. Remember, what you put first is the option that is liked the best. So who likes summertime better? Right, Shane. Shane would rather play on the beach than play in the snow. Those are my two boys. So taking a look at this construction again, which I put up top for you, this is the same construction. I have four other sentences. Let's take a look at each one and see how we do this. Sentence number one, I would rather take the subway than take a taxi. Here we've used the same verb. We've just added some information after each. I would rather take this than take that. So choosing the subway instead of the taxi. We could also use two different verbs. I would rather walk than run. Here you see two different verbs, right? I would rather walk than run. Which one is preferable? Which one is chosen? To walk, right? Because that is listed first. I would rather work in my garden than play video games. Here you see some more information added after each of the verbs. I would rather work than play. But it's not just work than play. It's actually something more specific, right? I would rather work in my garden than play video games. We added some specific detail. In the case of in my garden, we've added a prepositional phrase using the preposition in. Garden is the noun. In the case of video games, we've added a direct object. I would rather stay home to watch a movie than go to a movie theater. And here we see that we can add lots of information, right? Prepositional phrase to a movie theater, to watch a movie, that's adding an infinitive. So we can use lots of different constructions here. But either way, we're still putting the one we prefer. We put that first, the one closest to would rather. All right. So let's talk about this construction a little bit. So English speakers usually don't say the whole thing. We usually don't say the whole construction. That sounds very formal and very stiff. You could certainly do that in writing, but in speaking, we don't generally tend to do that. We know as English speakers, we love shortcuts. We love shortcuts. So here's how to do it. If the two verbs are the same, English speakers don't usually say the second verb again. We take it out. We could say, I would rather work in my garden than work in my garage, but too much work. Let's not say the verb a second time. We would say, I'd rather work in my garden than in my garage. Same thing with the next two examples. I would rather walk to the store than to the park. I'm not going to say walk a second time. We already know I mean walking. I just need to say the location, the two different locations. I would rather stay home to watch a movie than stay at school to study. We don't need to stay the second time. We've already said it once, and we know that that's the verb that's going to apply to both cases. Now, if your verb is different both times, if you're using two different verbs, then you have to say both verbs. But if your verb is the same, you can skip saying it again. You don't have to repeat it. So let's go ahead and build this step by step and test your mastery. What would you rather do? Drink coffee or drink tea? So go ahead and decide, what is your preference? Which one do you prefer? Do you like drinking coffee better or do you like drinking tea? So I've built out this example using both. So no matter which one you pick, you can see how it would flow. All right. So in our traditional construction, you would say, I would rather drink than drink. So in the top, I'm showing you if you prefer coffee, you would say, I would rather drink coffee than drink tea. But if you pick tea, of course, down below, you'll see the second example. I would rather drink tea than drink coffee. So just follow along with the picture that you selected. Of course, remember that one of our rules is if we are speaking, we actually don't repeat that verb. And since we have the same verb, we don't want to repeat it again. So we would cut that word out. I would rather drink coffee than tea, or I would rather drink tea than coffee. But wait, there's more. There's another shortcut that English speakers take. Have you caught it? I've said it a couple times, I think, already during this presentation. That's right. Rather than saying I would, we definitely love our contractions. And so we say I'd. I'd, I apostrophe D, is short for I would. And let's face it, it saves a whole lot of writing if we're writing this out. I'd rather drink coffee than tea, or I'd rather drink tea than coffee. So there you go. Pretty good, right? Except wait, there's more. Remember, if we're speaking like Americans, we definitely love to make shortcuts. And so sometimes we'll even drop off the comparison part. Which would you rather drink, coffee or tea? I'd rather drink coffee. I'd rather drink tea. And if we're really being honest, we don't even bother with I'd rather drink. We would just answer coffee or tea. But in this case, we need to know this construction. That's the important part. Can you use modals, this modal, in progressive? Yes, you can. So if you would rather be doing something now, moving into progressive rather than just sticking with simple present, we can totally do that. I would rather be working in my garden than playing video games. We've moved it from the general truth that it was in simple present to talking about what we want to be doing right now. And so the meaning shifts a little bit, right? I'm not just talking about in general, I'm talking about right now. Maybe there are times that I would rather be playing video games than working in my garden. It's just that right now, I feel like being in my garden. So I put it in progressive because I'm talking about right now, not a general truth. I'd rather be walking than riding a bicycle right now. Maybe I love to ride my bike. I was just out for a bike ride this morning, actually. But maybe right now, I'd rather be walking. So we change it into progressive because we mean right now. It's not a general truth about my life. It's just something right now. I'd rather be watching this movie at home than in this loud theater. Maybe sometimes normally I love being at the movie theater, but right now, just not into it. I'd rather be at home. So we change it into progressive. We take the would rather construction and we just use our verbs with the progressive. That's using to be plus your verb plus ing. You can totally do that. All right, here's the last part about would rather. We can make it negative. We can use would rather not to say we prefer or choose not to do something. For example, I'd rather not work in the garden today. The ground is too wet and cold. We don't usually do a comparison. Notice that there is no than and the other part that we're comparing it to. It's just all we're saying is we prefer not to do this one thing. So it's not necessary to have that choice. We just simply say we would rather not do it. I'd rather not walk to the store. My knee hurts. Let's drive instead. So I did offer an alternative, but I didn't set it up like a traditional comparison. Finally, I'd rather not stay home tonight. Let's walk downtown. I heard there's a band playing at the cafe. So saying something we would rather not do is a matter of saying it's a preference or it's a choice not to be doing something. But here's the most important part. When we use would rather not, it's about being polite. It's a great way to say you don't want to do something, but you're being really nice about it. So instead of saying, I don't want to work in the garden tonight. I don't want to stay at this movie theater. I don't want to be at this restaurant. We would say, I'd rather not. I'd rather not work in my garden tonight. It's too wet. I'd rather not be at the movie theater tonight. I just want to stay home. I'd rather not be at this restaurant. The wait is far too long. Let's go somewhere else. Okay? So it's just being extremely polite. Would you like to take the test a week early? I'd rather not, right? You can be extremely polite and still say, no, I don't want to. All right, take a choice, country or city? Which is your favorite? Do you like the country or the city? Okay, now that you've picked, can you practice with your modal, would rather, than? Go ahead and take a moment, press pause, and write a sentence or two using would rather and than. Go ahead. You can press pause and come back to find me. All right. Did you write some sentences? I wrote a few too. There are lots of things that we can say when we make comparisons using would rather. lots of different verbs to choose. So here are some that I constructed for you, and you can compare your answers to what I have. For example, you might say, I'd rather live in the country than in the city. Of course, you can reverse that. I'd rather live in the city than in the country. Or maybe you thought about travel instead. I'd rather travel to the city than to the country. Or maybe you thought about the verb visit. I'd rather visit the country than the city. Or perhaps you thought about taking a vacation. I'd rather take a vacation to the city than to the country. All right. So many ways that we can use would rather and form a construction. So go ahead and play a game with yourself or grab a friend and play. Teach yourself the would rather construction and really have fun working with it. Here are a whole bunch of choices that you can see to practice, write some example sentences, or play a simple game of would rather. Would you rather? Would you rather have a dog or a cat? I would rather have a dog than a cat, right? So you can do all sorts of things to get yourself ready for using would you rather out in the real world. All right. Good luck. Keep studying, and I wish you well.